everyone. Welcome to this new episode of Carolyn Talks. I'm your host, Carolyn Hines, film critic and journalist. And this is the podcast/YouTube channel where I speak to film creatives about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today, I'm joined by director and filmmaker Kristian Mercado to talk about his feature film debut, If You Were the Last, which premiered at the 2023 South by Southwest Film Festival. And I love this film. I love this, that is two different styles of filmmaking, and it's very retro, very nostalgic. Give me all the late 80s, early 90s beat.
Oh, wow.
Beatles. I was born in 1983. I'm aging myself, but I'm like, yes, this is my childhood right here in essence.
Oh,
So we'll talk a bit about that. But before we get to the film, as usual, I like to have my guests say a bit about themselves and what got them in along their career path. So for you, Kristian, what inspired you to become a filmmaker? Or I should say, like you started out doing music videos. You worked with people like Bad Bunny. I saw you worked with Ada Martinez for her stand-up. Is it Martinez? Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Sorry. Ada, I don't know why I say Martinez. Ada Rodriguez for her stand-up comedy Fighting Words, which I actually saw. And I actually interviewed her for Africa. And I love her stand-up comedy because she talked a lot about her Dominican, her heritage from the Dominican Republic. So like, it was great to see that you actually worked on her stand-up comedy because it was great staging and everything. So first, talk about your path and how you came to be where you are today.
Oh, wow. That's a deep question. I was always around like film, I think. Like film is, I think, a big love language within my family. Like, we've always had like ups and downs in my family, but I think films always brought us together. And like, my uncle was like kind of like, I always say he's the king of bootlegs of Puerto Rico. He used to have like,
bootlegs.
He had so many tapes, and he would do like movie nights where it would be like, oh, vampire night or horror night or robot night. And I think growing up with that at an early age, I kind of always associated film with love, and it became kind of like a love language. So I think it always like became something that I was always drawn to, or it always became a part of my life. And when I'm up, I need a film. When I'm down, I need a film. I look at like theaters like they're my church, sort of, So like, but then getting into it is like its own process, and I've always been like an artistic inclined person, so I would illustrate, draw, build things, film, do experiments, and over time that all accumulated to like filmmaking in some ways. So like, it's just a vibe, like it's just kind of like it's kind of like I was always drawn and moving towards it.
Yeah, and first of all, shout out to bootleg DVDs, VHS, cassette tapes. That's how it is in the Caribbean. We get to see most films and TV shows by bootleg. The bootleg guys were like the real OGs.
Yeah, 100%. It was like he had a massive collection where he would just have like so many cool films, and sometimes the tape would have like 3 movies on it.
Yes.
Sometimes it wouldn't be labeled, so you would be like put in a movie and then like discover what the movie is as you're watching it. Mm-hmm. There was always an element of surprise, and we're big blockbuster people too, so we would always like do the renting like 4 different movies and having like movie night all weekend and making popcorn, and it was a great feeling.
Yeah, that's the same. It was the same for us, but in Barbados we didn't have bootleg. We had not bootleg. We didn't have blockbusters. We had a company called Chubby's. So it was Chubby's videos.
Oh, we would go to,
and like my brother would take my twin sister and I. He's like 10 years older, so like every Friday evening, he would take us to the video store and have us each select 2 tapes.
So cool.
And he would pick his own tape, and for the whole weekend, that's what we would watch, right? And we would make it. It was like a family tradition. So we share that in common because that's how I fell in love with film. And like TV shows, especially. I think a lot of action film, a lot of sci-fi and action. That a lot of our.
Oh yeah, I love sci-fi and action. I mean, I like genre agnostic is what I say. Like, where I think all film is valid. So like, there's definitely an audience for every film to some degree. Mm-hmm. Like I love sci-fi. I like sci-fi just because it always gives you like a a perspective about what's happening in the future, and like, or a window into another world or a possibility. So there's something beautiful about that.
Yeah, and that's actually a perfect segue to our discussion of If You Were the Last, because this is in its essence a sci-fi film at the beginning. You know, it's about these two astronauts who are essentially stranded in space on a shuttle uh, orbiting Jupiter and Saturn, and they've been up there for going on over 3 years. And just to think about being stranded on a space shuttle for 3 years is literally a nightmare. It's something I could not deal with. Like when we grew up watching films like Alien, and like no, like no. Mm-mm. So for in the and the interesting thing about this film is it's sci-fi because it's talking about space travel. It's talking about all of the things that go along with that, the technology, which I thought was interesting because the concept for this segment of the film is very retro. You know, like the decor is like I would say late 60s, early 70s mod mid-century, but the consoles for the panels for the equipment is very much like Nintendo, you know, like the early Nintendo game console. So talk first about working with the production designing team and the costume designers working the visual aesthetic, because I wasn't expecting that aesthetic for the film at all. And I loved it. It was just like, yes, you got the little Nintendo hand consoles as a controls for the spaceship.
You know, it's I guess it's just inspired by like those feelings that I had about all those retro sort of mediums, and I also like the idea of seeing space in a way that you've never seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think we've all seen a spaceship, so we all know what that feels like, at least in media. And it was cool to kind of come up with a different take on it. Like, oh, what's a completely off the wall like vibe on this? And I think it works. Like I think it kind of like creates, like you said, like this retro feeling, but also like contemporary somehow. Like, but it's its own thing. And then like there's something nostalgic about those old game consoles that feels like it also like felt futuristic, but yet not, you know, and like there's a warmth to it, you know.
Yes.
Anytime something's analog, it feels warm, you know.
Yeah, it's true because it's more tactile. And I think the design for this, it kind of works for this film in particular because film space and like sci-fi films and shows, especially those that have like kind of like depressing themes, they're always very clinical in design, you know. It's always grays and whites and blacks and looking very sterile and just like cold and isolating. But in this environment, like it's very warm and inviting. It feels like a home. It feels like a spaceship that was made to be lived in. And I love that because the way the characters, Jane and Adam, played by Anthony Mackie and Zoe Chao, like they're having some really intense discussions, but in very fun ways. And it suits the atmosphere that the production team and that you have designed. And I love that it's so fun. For goodness sakes, we got chickens roaming around and a goat, right? So to me, I'm just like, I love that it's so warm and inviting.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of the Caribbean a little bit too, because the goats and the chickens are like, I really identified with that a lot actually in the film and in the script. I remember going, oh man, I was always around goats and chickens, and like I understood like how that works in some ways, you know, like where it's like they kind of, even though like sometimes you're you know, they could be your stock, but they could also be like in a weird way like your pets, you know, and that's like, you know, you can build a relationship with like a goat, you know, over time, and you know, it recognizes you, you recognize it. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's really cool. I'm glad that you can kind of see all the beauty of that production design and the way it was put together, and that it's a very colorful film. I'm a colorful person. Like I feel like I'm not trying to shy away from color. Like I think I feel like I like the idea of pushing the boundaries of like what a film's color palette can be, you know, not be limited by one color palette, but rather embrace that it can constantly be shifting colors and introducing new colors and new moods and new feelings, and connecting those things to where their characters are at in their brains and their mind. And Yeah, they talk about a lot of serious things. Yeah, I mean, it is like kind of low key. There's some real stakes in this movie emotionally that drive the story, and but there's like such a warmth to that, and it doesn't feel. It feels tender still, you know.
Yeah, no, it's and that's what I love a bit about it because like usually when people, it's usually this whole conversation of if you were the last person on earth, what I
Yeah.
see with you and that kind of stuff, and usually it's
Ah,
delivered in like a fun game. But for these two people, it's literally it could be a matter of life and death because like for the conversation that they part of the conversation they have they list three reasons, and like for the third reason is for Jane, like if she becomes pregnant, and for her that could potentially be a life and death situation because they don't have a medical professional on
yeah,
board, like that person is
yeah,
gone. They don't have any antibiotics, and she has to consider all of the ramifications of possibly becoming pregnant, you know, and like there's health concerns and like
yeah.
women being pregnant is a very dangerous is something that's very dangerous and something that isn't to me acknowledged in film, but you in a very I think in a very subtle way acknowledge that, and in the writing by the
Angela
writer, I want to make sure I say her name correct, Angela Bourassa.
Bourassa, yeah,
Bourassa. Yeah, like she, I think her writing is very smart and very funny and witty, but also
yeah.
very deep. And like those things, like talking about the possibility of pregnancy, you know, and the ramifications of that, and the health concerns of being stranded in space
Mm-hmm.
for years. So the whole debate of if you were the last doesn't only have to do with sex, you know, it has to do with if you're the last person that I have a intimate conversation with, you know, if you're the last person I ever get to dance with, if you're the last person I ever get to share a meal with. And I love
Yeah.
how those kind of conversations come about.
Oh wow, you totally got this film. Like that's totally on the nose right there. Like it is about those things, those little moments that add up and make a relationship so special or make anything special or living a life, you know? Like whether it be like sharing this meal, it's like there is like the question about sex is there, but like it's actually way deeper than just the sex. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and so when you're and in the filming process, or even should say not even just the filming, but in even the rehearsal process with Anthony
Yeah.
and Zoe, like what kind of conversations did the three of you have and with the writer about these characters and how maybe perhaps their perception of the characters changed during rehearsal and during filming from what they had during like perhaps during auditioning and then at the beginning.
You know, it's interesting because I've talked to Angela a lot about the script, and she's an amazing writer. Like I
Mhm.
think the script is just incredible. I'm really lucky and fortunate that I got to direct it, and I think like in our conversations, I feel like um there's definitely a feeling of loss that I think you can kind of feel in the script, like you know, there's something that was lost, right? And sometimes we lose things, and I felt like I related to that feeling a lot. And I was like, I lose things too. And I feel like me and Angela really clicked on that level about like, oh, we've gone through these like hard periods of our lives where we lose things, and but yet we don't let it like consume us in a way that like it's like oh like we try to find the joy, you know, the joy in that moment, and it's a practice and a discipline. It's not easy. um and so when I was working with the actors on the script, I think we read it together multiple times, we rehearsed it, we did table reads, we really focused a lot when I was breaking the script down on like what the emotion of the moments are, like what's the emotion of this scene, like are the characters emotionally. That was really the biggest question on set always. Like where are these two at this point in time in the story? Like, are they more friends? Are they more like, you know, are they is there a distance? Are they close? You know, like how would you feel about this moment if this was happening like for real, like if you were like losing your best friend or giving up on your best friend or trying to stay with your best friend, like these moments are so real for some people, and I was just like really trying to like get that to feel as real as possible. And I think because the set was really kind of like a very vulnerable, open, like kind of conversational set where we can kind of just have like deep conversations in the middle of filming and be like, hey, like how does this feel? It allowed us, I think, to tap into some very real things.
Yeah, and in talking about real, like I want to talk about some of the topics that they discuss. And one of the first things that they do discuss, like the film opens with them talking about the film The Martian, and about the government spending $1 trillion to save this one man from Mars, from being stranded on Mars. And at first, it seems like a very comical conversation, and it's interesting because you're setting their world in ours. Like you're referencing real life things, like the film, like The Martian, the book, and playing music by people like Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton, Richie. And so, like, I love that
pop culture.
Exactly. I love that they exist in our world, and it's not kind of like a future or alternate reality kind of situation. It's very much in ours. So there's that. But then I love how, because it's kind of like me. I'm the kind of person that's like, sometimes I think of one thing and then I start like thinking about like 10 or 20 different things. And like a lot of them don't seem like to have correlation, but they do. So like in this conversation about The Martian, they're talking about the government spending $1 trillion to save this man. Mm-hmm. And then they start talking about, okay, will the government spend money to do the same for us? Or are they sending anyone to look for us? And then the conversation shifts about how that money could be used to save, like, if $1 trillion is used to save one man, like if you break that down individually, how much could that do to save however many people on Earth, Yeah. And Jane, she breaks it down, like she says, okay, like if you take $1,200 out of and apportion it out, $1,200 can mean the difference of life and death for a family, for a person who is unhoused, for a person who is sick. And I love that Angela put those kind of like situations within the script, because she's making it real world, and it's not just about entertainment, like it's a funny conversation, but it really makes you think about how, like, if per chance we're in this situation, what would you prefer? Would you prefer the government spend $1 trillion to save you, or would you want it to go and save like 1,200, 1,500, 200,000 people?
Yeah, totally. There's always a little sugar, little medicine in the sugar is what I call it, right? It's nice. I mean, I think her style of writing is just like really cool in that it just has a really cool tone, but it also like, it's so subtle, but so well done. And like, yeah, she just writes in a really special way, I would say. Like, because I feel, those conversations, the banter, the joy you feel, the characters feel so alive.
They do. And another thing, and it's something literally just popped in my head, like we could also think about how studios spend hundreds of millions of dollars to produce a film like The Martian, but your film is essentially the same thing. It is, in essence, where it's talking about people who are stranded in space, and like, is the government going to spend however much money to save these people? And you're like, your budget, it's an independent film, but you got the same discussions about world politics, geopolitics, about finances, about loneliness and feeling isolated from your loved ones, and all of that. And it's much more colorful, and we have more than just Matt Damon. Sorry, Matt. But anywho, but so that thought just occurred to me, just like, and in this one we have fun chickens and a goat, and like we have, so talk about a bit about how the film also explores loneliness, how even in space where there's these two individuals, like they have companionship, they have a friendship, they get along extremely well, but you can still feel lonely, like they're still missing home. And I think, and this is, I talk about this often, but I can't help it because I'm an immigrant, but it's just like where you as long as you're away from home, you always feel some kind of disconnect. Even if you're surrounded by your own family members, if you're surrounded by friends, even if you're in a colorful, fun environment where you have like food, water, shelter, but you still feel isolated and alone, and you still feel fear.
Yeah, just so I get it, like the question, what was the question?
Talk about how like the film explores those concepts of feeling lonely, isolated, even when you aren't physically alone.
Oh yeah, I feel like, people don't talk about loneliness enough, like in general, and like probably don't speak on like what that does or how that feels, and or just the fact that sometimes just feeling seen is such a big part of life. Like I think that's such a big part of the equation of love in some way. Like I think when you feel truly seen, and when somebody really, really sees you, it's like vulnerable and it's also scary. Like sometimes we don't want to be seen. Like you're almost like too. It almost feels like being naked. You're like, oh, I'm being showing you too much, or you're seeing too much of me, and you want to hide a little bit of that. But I feel like that's part of the magic of love, I guess, like finding that moment. And the world can be a lonely place, yeah, and isolation can do a lot to you. And in those moments, I think once you find that, like, the joy or that moment that you hold on to somebody, and and sometimes if it clicks right, it feels like you don't have to be alone in the world. And like that's a magical feeling, I think. Like I believe in that feeling a lot. I believe that that we are like a community, that people want to like connect with others, that we crave connection, and that like it's an important part of human existence to connect with other people. And I think there's beauty in that.
Yeah, there is. There's a beauty in being understood. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that Jane and Adam exemplify. Like they've had time to get to know each other, like they have nothing but time to get to know each other. They play games, and they play these games. We, the audience, also learn who they are. We learn that Adam likes old school music. He likes oldie goldies. He likes old country music, but yeah, still somehow he doesn't like Dolly Parton. Make it make sense. But he likes the old classic films like Casablanca, and for Jane, she likes like Kenny Rock. She likes like Lionel Richie. She loves Dolly Parton, and she loves action films like Alien. But I think beyond that, we get to see how the intimacy that they grow, and it's not like romantic intimacy or sexual intimacy, but it's just an intimate friendship. Like they became soulmates, like they have these dancing sessions, which I think are like beautifully choreographed and filmed and shot and acted, where like we get to see who they really are. This is whatever differences they have. It's kind of like how there are couples who say never go to bed angry. For them, it's like no matter what disagreements we have, we at the end of the day we have to dance. At least we have
Yeah.
to do thing before we go to bed. So I want you to talk about those scenes, because I love the dancing scenes, because each one is like a different genre.
Yeah, I love dancing. I dance a lot myself. Like I love to dance. Like I feel like you communicate a lot through dancing. Like the body moving, and like it's like an unspoken, like there's a language happening when you dance, and it brings a lot of joy too. And I think in this film, I think that dancing is kind of an extension of their relationship a lot of times. Like like when you see their dances, without saying too much, it's like where they're at in their relationship. Like, oh, this is where we're going. This is what we're at emotionally. So I think like the dancing is not just dancing, but it's actually like narratively driven. Like it's like not just dancing for the sake of dancing. It's like this is dancing that moves the story forward. And it's like kind of beautiful, actually. Like it's cool to have sequences like that in a film that are fun and cool and interesting, but also like push the story forward.
Yeah, I kind of see like to me, dancing is a conversation, because I love dancing, and like dancing, I think you can learn a lot about people through their dancing, and like you learn a lot about people through their music. Same thing as learning about people through their music choices and their movie choices. And the film kind of has all of these different modes of communication, which I think is lovely. Like and it kind of flips gender norms as well, in like the sense that Adam is like, he has the green thumb, he loves animals, he loves the plants, and he talks to them like I talk to my plants. My plants in my house have names, and I talk to them. And he does that, he talks to these things and he cares for them. And for Jane, she's the technical one, she's the one that flies, that she's the pilot for the ship, she's more a bit more analytical in her thoughts, where he's more emotionally driven. And I think there is an interesting thing where for them, like the conversation, whenever they talk about going home or being found or being saved, like he's adamant that they're not going to be saved. He's adamant that they're not going back home, and that being stranded in space is it. where she's just like always trying to go home, always trying to communicate to go home.
There's something interesting about like they definitely have kind of an opposites attract sort of thing going on a bit, but like I like that they challenged what you typically would see in a rom-com, I think, as like the relationship dynamics. Like the relationship dynamics between the two is very, very different and very dynamic, I think, in a different way, like in a way that I haven't seen before, you know?
Yeah, and because chemistry plays such a big part in how these characters interact, and again, it's not just sexual chemistry, but they start as friends, you know, like they have
Yeah.
like a true friendship, and they're true best friends, and like
Mhm.
they know they have no one else to rely on. So because of this chemistry and because of this development that these two characters have, what was the casting process like? And then what was it about Anthony and Zoe that you saw that made you that made
Oh
it click and
yeah.
say this is Jane and Adam?
They're both great actors. They're both like really well, like amazing theater trained actors, you know, like they have this theatrical background that I loved because there's something about this film that has in terms of process, it felt like doing theater, you know, like we were just like in a a warehouse box with this ship that we made ourselves that became our set. It's a two-hander. It's just really living and dying on their performances. So like I feel like once I saw them talking to each other, I was like, oh, I could see this working. Like I could imagine it in a way, like I could see the whole film almost the minute I saw them interact. I was like, oh, this is gonna work because like they already have like a dynamic that I felt that I could only see growing through the process. So, and I think like Anthony Mackie is just an amazing, talented actor who has like such a wild range that I think gets underutilized. Like he doesn't get like put on to the roles that I think he could do so much, and I don't think people see that. And I felt I wanted to see him take on this role because it's so different from anything he's done before. But I also, with Zoe, I also feel like she has like a very powerful, like quality to her, acting and performance wise, that I was just like blown away by. That I wanted to see sparkle on camera, and I felt like once you put them together, it's like undeniable that there's like something that's so joyous to see about them interacting.
Yeah, no, I agree. And with regards to Anthony, yeah, this is the first time I've seen him in a role like this in a very, very long time. And it like we and like because like he's been stuck doing Marvel for how many years now? And this is the first time in a really long time we got to see him be endearing and be funny and be smart and even get to sing, you know, and he's awkward and shy. Like this character is very layered and nuanced. Both of them are very layered and nuanced because we get to see them be afraid. And you know, like I think for Adam in particular, like his adamance that they're not going to be saved and go back to home I think a lot of it has to do with being afraid. You know, he's afraid to hope. You know, he's afraid to give in to
Yeah.
hope and then be disappointed. So he's like, I'm gonna be in denial. I'm just gonna be like, accepted the fact that we're gonna be floating through space till we die. Because if I begin to hope, if
Aww.
I lose it, he might have a breakdown. And like they've been holding strong for 3 years, and he's like, I can't do it. Whereas for Jane, Zoe, so she's so funny and she's so smart and she's so personable, you know, like she's like you would have the thought, you know, if I had to be stranded in space, I want to be stranded with someone like that. That's me. I'm like, you know, like have someone who's willing to play games and dance and also be honest. Because I love that this film does not go into the tropes where they hide things from each other. If something happens, they immediately tell someone, you know, because there's a trope, especially in sci-fi, something happens like, you know, they don't hide, they don't tell people important things. Like someone gets a cut, they're like, I'm gonna hide the cut because like this is just a cut. I'm like, no, you're stuck in space. If you end up getting infected and it has to get amputated, this is a problem. But we don't
Yeah,
fall into that trope.
yeah, no, totally. I was definitely like aware and like I felt like anytime you can challenge a trope, that's a good thing. Like breaking things down that way or looking at it from a completely different perspective, you know. And I think in this film we constantly do that in good, exciting ways. So to me, that was super, super fun and satisfying. Like I love that feeling of like whether it be their dynamic, the setting, um, yeah, like anything, like just challenging the trope, you know, was nice, you know, and constantly trying to do that.
Yeah, there's I honestly can't say if there's anything in this film that is actually predictable because and that's always a joy
I
for me. I
love
love when
that. I
I lo-
love that.
yeah, there's nothing that I would say, oh, I watched this and I called that this was gonna happen. I'm like, no, like I like that when I can't, or even if I think something that's gonna happen, it doesn't happen in the way that I thought it was gonna happen, you know? And even right up until the end, I'm just like, I love that. And we're gonna wrap up now, but I want to know, like, what was one of your favorite aspects of filming if you were the last? You know, like, what was your favorite like thing about either working with the cast or the crew, or like maybe perhaps your favorite scene?
Oh, I mean, wow. Being on set is just a joy and a pleasure and a privilege. And like, there's so many days that I was fucking, so many days that I was just so
Okay.
like full of joy and like having like amazing time with people that I think will always be part of my life on some level, or I hope so. And I also like just feel like, yeah, there's a magic that happens in film. There's a magic that I love community. Like I say that a lot, but it's true. Like, and filmmaking ultimately is community. And I think the filmmaking process is a community driven process, you know, and so I think my favorite thing about it was just like being able to share these moments with that community, and also um, I think just having that feeling of being part of something special that I felt a lot of the crew members felt at some points. You know, like sometimes you go into like I think as a crew member, you probably jump on a job not quite sure what you're signing up for to some degree. Like you might read the script, but you don't know what's going to happen once you get on set. Um, but I felt like in a real, genuine way, people would elevate the work because they would see how important it was at the time, you know, like something like, oh, something's clicking, like this is a special moment that, like, I don't know, like, you know, I feel like certain crew members, it almost felt like, oh, I don't know if this type of project will come again the same way. And there's such a joy and a magic here. And they were so excited about the film themselves. Then I liked that feeling, like the ability to like ignite a passion in somebody, you know. And I think like I hope that it makes people who watch the film also feel that passion, where they like watch it and they feel invigorated, or they feel joy, or they feel like they want to share with a loved one, you know. So that's my deepest hope for the film.
Yeah, I hope so too. I had fun with it, and it's definitely rewatchable because I think another thing about the film is like there's so much to look at, right? And there's a transition in the film that I thought was beautifully executed, where you know, it goes from the, I think almost like this, it's almost like they're in a dream, you know, kind of like is this a fantasy? And like now they're approaching reality, and like the fantasy and the story, and it starts to slip away, and now they have to face reality. So I love that. It's not a spoiler, but I love that particular transition. And again, I thought it was another unique aspect of the film too, because that's also something that's very unexpected and unpredictable. And so I hope that you have a career that is like that, you know, is colorful and unpredictable, and you get to continue to do whatever you do. Because this honestly, I think this film is a joy, honestly.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I hope that I think that's colorful and unpredictable. From the colorful and unpredictable mind of Kristian Mercado, you know, like comes that'll be the vibe. That sounds
Yes, for
perfect.
sure. I can't wait to see what you do next. Thank you so much for taking the time for speaking with me,
Oh,
Kristian.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for like enjoying the movie and like yeah, being here as well and talking about it. I love this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yay. I wish I was in Austin, but alas, I'm here in cold Toronto.
No worries. We appreciate it. I mean, it's the weather here is like all over the place. It's like cold yesterday, hot today. So
I know. I see my friends there walking around in shorts. I'm like, you lucky. I'm like, you guys are so lucky. I'm here wearing snow boots and jackets, and they're all like walking around.
definitely a shorts day. Like it's a good day for shorts. If you got them, do it.
I'm jealous. All right.
Well,
Thank you,
it's been really
Kristian.
great talking. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Have a good day.
Have a good one.